Let me first ask you what your reaction is to Ursula von der Leyen. Did she do a great job as defense minister, and now because of that success, she's been given a more important job?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that in the end, she was the person that everybody could agree on. But this, of course, is the way that the European Union works most of the time. She wasn't a great defense minister, but she was an excellent social minister and family minister, and she's an experienced politician. And if you compare with her few predecessors, shall we say, not naming any names, she's certainly more competent than any of them were. So I think we should be positive about her arrival in office.
Well, and what I was thinking yesterday when she gave her speech, it almost seemed like a Green New Deal a la AOC. I mean, she really hit hard the need to address climate change, and also not just the cost, but the opportunity that could present.
Yeah, well, that's the flavor of the month in Europe these days. We've been having a very hot summer, regardless of the cold weather here today in Berlin, and climate change has become a very big issue. But I think the point to remember here is that von der Leyen got into office because the countries put her there. And it's increasingly the national governments in the EU who decide what happens. The European Parliament is a sort of a green-oriented thing, but that has very little to do with what the governments themselves think.
Okay, and she was talking to the Parliament yesterday, wasn't she, John? Good to have you with us. Anna in London here. We heard von der Leyen talking there to our colleague, Jonathan Stearns, about the threat of tariffs from the United States and the interdependence that has with other matters. Does that suggest that perhaps the Europeans are going to have to give some ground on something to prevent the US putting tariffs on European goods, more tariffs than exist already on steel, for example, so on cars?
Well, probably. I mean, the fact is, of course, that with President Trump, you're never quite sure what his motives are or what his next step is. He seems to like to threaten, and then sometimes he comes through, sometimes he doesn't. I think the Europeans are looking a little bit helplessly at the United States because they're not quite sure how to influence Trump. I hope that they have a catalog of things which are not too onerous, which they might offer to him, because that's probably in the end going to be what he wants. He wants a victory, and if they can give him a sense of victory, they'll probably be okay.
And German industry clearly under pressure already from the tensions between China and the US. How hopeful are you? How much do you expect some sort of resolution to those trade tensions ahead of the 2020 election? Because this has morphed from something that was just about tariffs to something that is much more about two rival powers vying for supremacy.
Yeah, that's what it's about. And it's also about two rival powers whose presidents are anything but secure in their political existence. Trump looks at the polls and sees that he's 10% behind most of the Democratic challengers. Xi looks at his internal situation. He looks at the situation in Hong Kong. Also, the fact that Chinese growth is slowing down tremendously. So each of them have several levels of issues. If it were just talking about trade, that might be one thing. But each of them has lots of other problems, which might be helped by a trade agreement, but then might not.
Can von der Leyen actually, I mean, if we look at the export of cars, for example, it's a huge German issue. So It's great for Germany to have her at the EU Commission. In fact, it's more important for Germany than it is any other country. I think we have a fantastic chart here to show you that, but you already know it. Can von der Leyen actually do something about the car tariffs? Because this is Donald Trump's main concern. If Ford wants to sell cars in Germany, it's got to pay a 10% tariff to get them over here. When BMW wants to sell cars in the US, it's got to only pay 2.5%. Although, of course, the solution for BMW has been just to build them in South Carolina. If you could get rid of just this one nominal tariff among a sea of numbers that are probably more important, it might appease the president. Can she do that?
Well, I would hope so. I don't think this tariff is good for anybody, to tell you the truth. It probably goes back to the 1980s when they were worried about Japanese imports. But the fact is, in the case of Ford, they build cars in Europe also. And so, as we know, I mean, this is not a secret, the automobile industry is totally global and multilateral, and cars are made wherever it's most useful to make them. BMW is the largest exporter of American cars in the United States. So Trump's whole argument is specious and is politically oriented. And I think this tariff on cars that the Europeans have, cars that the United States really doesn't much try to sell here anyway, might be a way of getting out of it. But I'm not well enough aware of the political background of it.